Hey, it's Sigrun with Universal Pagan Temple, and today we're going to be talking about if American Christians can change. Because with all the targeting that American pagans are getting, American witches are getting right now from the mostly evangelicals and Christian Zionists and what have you, it's kind of seeming like, okay, yeah, there's a big target on our back. Now, I want to give a shout out before we begin to Thomas Sheridan. You shared my video and I got a ton of subscribers. My video got a ton of views. I mean, thank you so much. And for my new subscribers, welcome to the channel. And I post about maybe 3-4 times a week, and I hope you like what I have to say. But yeah, we're going to be talking about some of the things that Thomas shared in that video where, he mentioned me, the Universal Pagan Lady. I accept that title, by the way. So about American Christians and, for the most part, Protestant Christianity in America, evangelicalism, and that kind of drags into Christian Zionism within America, and can it change? Because it is on such they're shooting themselves in the foot at every opportunity, it feels like, especially with how they're going after pagans, especially with the book that was written by Lucas Miles. I did a review on it called Pagan Threat. And why he chose the word pagan threat, he did that on purpose. So unfortunately, the gloves are off at that point when he write a title called Pagan Threat. I mean, he could have called pagans stupid liberal wankers for all I care, and I wouldn't have, I might have done a review on it and laughed about it, but calling us a threat, yeah, that's taking it from like down here to like way up here. Come on, dude. But I want to address, the difference between American Christians and European Christians. Like Thomas said, it's actually really dramatic. Where I know there's some harassment that pagans get over there in Europe, a little more in Eastern Europe than in Western Europe, from what my understanding. But it's not as bad as what American pagans have to go through. And I'm focusing on American pagans, not necessarily Canadian pagans or Mexican pagans, because I know that, as the liberals say, oh, that's my lived experience. Okay. Yeah, I think the divide really comes from, when Protestantism started and, various groups of Christians immigrated over to America over the past 400 years. And it's it kind of mirrors evolution, and also even dog breeding. I'll make that analogy where, European Protestantism went one way, and then American Protestantism went another way, where I have a black lab, and he's an American black lab. He's not a English black lab, where the English is more stocky. They have better focus, but an American black lab, they are, they're thinner, sleeker, and they're a little more hyper. They're a little more like a golden retriever, which I've had a golden retriever as well, and their personality. So it's kind of a reflection of, the Americans have jetted off so far from what European Christians are, that the American Christians, they're a little more extreme, obviously. They're more, in some places, they're, as extreme as Muslims. I know that in Europe, Christianity's kind of, at death's door. Maybe people are starting to go more with Catholicism, okay, or Orthodoxy, okay. But in America, it is so deeply ingrained with Evangelical Christianity, born-again Christians, Baptists, Methodists, on and on. I mean, there are so many different denominations in America itself that are non-Catholic. And that leads me to the point of talking about why American Protestants, evangelicals, develop so strangely, and why, they're so adverse to paganism in itself is because they were told, a lot of our ancestors, whether you came from England, Ireland, Scotland, France, Germany, you were told to forget who you were. It's not about who you are, but it's where you're going. You were told to give up the Protestant versus Catholic. There's many stories of that, and adopt this American culture. That was, pre, I want to say 1900, where that was really pushed. And then, gradually it kind of, you see the independence of the Italian Americans. They're very independent from the American consciousness, but they've, adopted it. But, they're very Catholic, and they kept their, Italian roots there. Whereas Irish Americans, especially English Americans, they're the main group that have lost their identity. And what I want to get to the point of losing their identity is losing a part of that connection to Europe, to their pagan ancestors, which is very important. And there are pockets of people, that have come out of Christianity in America that have found paganism, or have just, gone straight atheist because of their displeasure with Christianity. And then the question arises, I found my way out of Christianity into paganism. I started with Egyptian paganism, oddly enough, and then kind of dabbled in Norse paganism, found Wicca, and then went from Wicca into Norse paganism again. But how does an American evangelical find paganism? A lot of them are, like I said, they find atheism or agnostic. I want to connect it in my mind. I've got this theory that it's more of the environment, the actual weather where you are, that helps you connect to your ancestry more. Where, these American evangelicals in the Bible Belt, so that's, Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana, all the way to Florida and the Carolinas, and, Kentucky, Tennessee. That's the Bible Belt. And, it has strongholds all over America. And of course, Utah, that's the Mormon stronghold. And the Mormons are very English American. I think that's actually the strongest population of English blood in America is Utah. But the weather in the Bible Belt in specific, because I was born and raised in Texas, is hot and humid. Now, hot and humid, you don't really think about your ancestry that much, whether your ancestry was from the British Isles, Scandinavia, Germany, and there's a lot of Germans in Central Texas, by the way. The environment doesn't remind you of that. What it reminds you of is the Middle East, because it's kind of, the same environment, very hot, and then some areas, extremely humid. You take Louisiana. And so they connect to biblical texts because their environment, their physical environment, represents more of that, kind of where the Bible actually took place in the Middle East. So yeah, they kind of relate to it. And then I also have a theory, that's one theory. The other theory is that because it's so hot in the Bible Belt, it kind of cooks your brain. If you've ever lived in the Bible Belt or lived, somewhere where it was just unbearably hot, like I have my hair down right now. I didn't have that in Texas because I had to have my hair up, even if I had just taken a shower. I walk outside and immediately the back of my neck would start sweating. And that's one of the main reasons I moved from Texas to Washington State, was to get into a better environment where it was cooler. You actually have seasons. Yeah, and that's also kind of a theory I have about why these evangelicals are so extreme is because the heat is kind of baking their brains and making them angrier and angrier. And, you see it over there in the Middle East, with all the wars over there, the Muslims, it kind of bakes the brain. And with the Abrahamic God plus high heat, humidity, kind of makes you go a little bit crazy. I know there are some people that, are exceptions to that get away from that mindset. It's not everybody over the Middle East. It's not everybody in the Bible Belt, but you are kind of predisposed to it. I feel, and definitely, I'm not as grumpy as I was in Texas as I am here because of the weather. And that it's just a theory of mine. If you feel free to disagree with me in the comments, or if you feel the same, if you're in the Bible Belt right now in America and you hate it, I know there's Spain, it's kind of hot as well. But I don't think they have the same amount of humidity that, a lot of the Bible Belt has, because they have that Mediterranean breeze coming in. So it's not as extreme. But yeah, can American Christians change? Well, I think it needs to come through, what's going on right now with Israel and American politics, because it is kind of fallen apart. Okay, so Ian Carroll, he came out with a video the other day where he exposed, or somebody else exposed on Twitter, who was it? X, whatever you want to call it. Village Crazy Lady Mel. Israel's plan to win back Christians. According to new FARA filings, Israel has just hired a California firm to conduct the largest Christian church geofencing campaign in U.S. history. In order to target evangelical churchgoers with pro-Israel, anti-Palestinian messaging. I understand that, a lot of those Palestinians are Muslims, but it's, it's an absolute shame that so much death and destruction is going on there. And, it's kind of cursed the land over there. I mean, that has been going on for centuries. But, yeah, she goes into more detail about this geofencing, which is actually, if you walk in there, near a church with your smartphone, it is going to target your phone, your social medias, with a bunch of propaganda, which is absolutely frightening. And this is what they're targeting Texas, Utah, Arizona, with these messages. So, even if you drive by the church and you got your phone, you're going to get these targeted messages. Can American Christians change? They have to want to change, and they have to get out of this mindset. And I see people like Candace Owens. They're kind of exposing some of this brainwashing to people, and she's got a huge crucifix in the background when she's talking. So she wants to break the spell of Israel over the evangelical mindset, which is a good thing for pagans, because these evangelicals, remember, they target pagans. They write books like Pagan Threat. That's the American Christian evangelical way, apparently, right now. But and I also wanted to cover something else that I've been saying. Thomas Sheridan touched upon it in a video earlier today, but I've seen it as well, where Charlie Kirk is being used in AI. He was talking about Charlie Kirk being seen with Jesus. No, I saw a video where he was being shown in a church and using his likeness to spread the gospel, using his likeness and his voice. And that's I want to get on to Egyptian paganism with this conversation. Within Egyptian paganism, if you're not aware, if you say somebody's name after they die, it gives them energy in the afterlife, in the duat. And if you have their image and you harm it, it harms them in the afterlife. So with these AI images, anybody could really harm you in the afterlife if they wanted to. And that's kind of what I wanted to get to, is that, I think there's a way to have your image scrubbed from online, if you just recently died, but it needs to be more of a movement to have your image scrubbed online after you've passed away, because people can use that image, use it against your will after you've died. And this kind of ties into evangelical Christians or just Protestants in general. They don't have good funeral rites, a good grieving process. I mean, you can look at how the Protestant mindset has influenced American work culture, is that our bereavement is usually only 3 business days, and we are not allowed really to grieve properly because of that. And then you see these, Protestants, whatever the denomination, they have a really difficult time with death. And so they glom on to certain things that make them feel comforted. One of the things I saw after Charlie Kirk was assassinated, it was disgusting. All these tarot readers, or they use dowsing rods to ask Charlie Kirk questions. And for me, that is very disrespectful. One, because Charlie Kirk was a devout Christian. I mean, I disagree with Christianity, but you don't want to do anything that somebody wouldn't want you to do in life to them in death. And then you also, number 2, don't want to interrupt their journey to the afterlife, whatever afterlife they end up going to, because the spirit can become confused, especially with the traumatic way Charlie Kirk passed away. His spirit could already be very confused. And Candace Owens said that she had a dream where Charlie Kirk came to her and said, I was betrayed. Okay, well, that indicates a couple of things that Candace Owens has been talking about. But to me, she's talking about intuition literally on her channel about Charlie Kirk. She's having a little bit of a pagan awakening, maybe. Not fully, but at least she's open to it. Good for her. But anyway, from Candace Owens talking about her dream of Charlie Kirk to Charlie Kirk being used in AI. I do want to say that, another point I wanted to make, that, if somebody erases your name completely, scrubs your name, within the Egyptian mindset, within Egyptian paganism, you cease to be. We want to avoid spirits getting confused, getting damaged. So whether, whatever pagan path you are on, whatever your belief systems are as a pagan, if somebody passes around you, for one, don't let their images be used in AI. Don't let their photos be used, to do some sort of AI crap. And then, maybe cast some protective energy upon them. I would suggest using runes like Elhaz, or even, I wouldn't use Dagas. except upon AI collecting data. But then I would use, sorry, there's a fly around me. I would use Raido and Wunyo to kind of, send them on their way happily, where they need to go so they can, join with the ancestors, reincarnate, because at this time, Charlie Kirk probably hasn't reincarnated at this time. I don't believe so. It's too soon. And then his spirits being tied here to the mundane, it kind of feels like to this realm, to this level of existence with using all this AI. And like Thomas Sheridan said in his video, these Christians are completely uneducated on this topic of you need to let go in a healthy way to the people that you admire, to your loved ones. And with the Christian evangelical American mindset, it is very difficult because they've also lost those pagan rituals that were so healthy for us. You go to a funeral of any other culture, any other religion, and they have a very healthy way of dealing with that grief because they've still kind of held on to some of their pagan beliefs. I've heard of Korean funerals being, a good example of this. They handle death in a healthy way, whereas American Christians they hang on in an unhealthy way. And like I said, the 3 days of bereavement is not enough, especially if it was a close relative or something as traumatic as Charlie Kirk's passing, where it was broadcast online. And I think a very good video somebody did on this was the astrologer Fiona Edgar. I think it's about maybe a year or two during Samhain. She did a wonderful video explaining, why Christians, their funeral rites are not appropriate, and it also creates more spirits. And I agree with that because I've had clients of my husband come to us with spirit issues because they don't know how to get rid of them. They're afraid of them. They don't know how to address the situation. And, it creates a really bad problem. Or, they've done something to upset a spirit, like, remodeling, or they live too close to a river. And they've unknowingly invited a spirit in. It becomes a lot. So, in conclusion, can American Christians change? Emphasis on the evangelicals and Protestants of various denominations. It might take, honestly, a couple 100 years. The evangelicals I've been around, they are completely indoctrinated and say if all of the propaganda coming from the Zionist crew, Christian Zionists, ends tomorrow, it's still so deeply embedded. If you know, you know. If you don't know, I have a lot of experience with it because I had a roommate that was a evangelical Christian from Oklahoma, and indoctrinated. It's like it's as bad as almost as bad as Islam, like a regular Muslim, and it would take maybe 200 years. Although we can be hopeful, have a little hopium. that things will change a little faster than that, but obviously I'm a little envious of the European pagans. They got a little easier than the American pagans right now, and hopefully we'll just see what happens. But until then, we've got to kind of watch our backs as American pagans. If you've watched this far, thank you so much for watching. If you like my videos, please like, share, subscribe, comment. If you really like them, please leave a donation, either PayPal or become a Patreon supporter. I really appreciate it. And until next time, blessed be.